Hello and welcome to the session. Now in this session we will understand the core concepts of Selenium, a block diagram or an architecture, and we'll also do one hands-on. So let's get started. Now in this particular session, apart from architecture discussion, we will see some hands-on on some of the basic topics, and these advanced topics we will see in the subsequent sessions. Now typical GUI testing needs are for web browser and for mobile application. Now, why web application and why Selenium is important here? So if you see earlier examples in earlier generation for banking, so if you want to withdraw some money or do some transaction, we have to actually go to a bank and do this operation. Uh, if you want to book a train ticket, we have to actually go to the office and we have to book a ticket. Now things have changed, technology has advanced, and now there are many applications which are coming up. Now in earlier generation as well, there were this sort of desktop application wherein the application will be developed on a Windows or typically on Windows system, and operator has to start that application just like this PowerPoint presentation and do the operation. Now that also has changed because of lot of network connectivity and lot of advancements in the technology. Now that this can be done online in the sense it can be done using browser. Now because of this, there is a huge set of applications which are going online, which are already online, and things have changed. So if the application is going online, you can access it using browser or mobile app or even an device, let's say iPad. uh, we need to test it, and that is why testing the application on a browser or on a mobile app has an important uh, agenda. It is very important to test it because end user is going to use it, and we have to test it before we release the application to the end user. Now Selenium is a suite of tools for automating web browsers, and that is why we will understand how Selenium can address this particular need. So at architecture level, if you see, technically speaking, Selenium is basically has some language bindings which will have different language implementation using Java, Python, C#, Ruby, JavaScript, PHP. So what has happened, that Selenium library has come up with this set of classes or interfaces using which programmatically you can control the browser. Now how that happens is, for every typical browser, let's say Chrome, Firefox or Internet Explorer, Microsoft Edge and so on, that particular vendor has come up with their own browser driver file. A browser driver is something which will actually talk to the real browser over an HTTP server. Now the communication happens two-way, like browser driver will give commands to the real browser, and real browser will in turn return some equivalent data or the result of the action and so on. Now what actually happens is these Selenium Java bindings will actually talk to the browser driver file using something called as a Json wire protocol. It's just another protocol to communicate your code with the browser driver file. The browser driver file can be different for different operating system. For example, for Windows, it's a .exe file. For Linux and Mac, there are equivalent files. So the real architecture is this happens over a JSON wire protocol, and whatever commands you want to give to the browser as a user action, that will be given from this Selenium binding to this browser driver, and in turn the browser driver will pass on those to the actual browser. So this is the little end-to-end flow and basic architecture. Now technically speaking, as I said, Selenium is a set of classes and interfaces. So let us see the Selenium class hierarchy. Now of course it's a huge set of classes and packages and interfaces. So let's understand the required part here. Now if you see, the very popular implementation as on today is the WebDriver interface, which basically extends another interface, search context. So technically speaking, also in interview, if it is asked that what is the base class or base interface of a Selenium library, you can very well say search context, because search context is basically extended in the WebDriver, or WebDriver is also one of the popular answer. Now these blue parts are interfaces, and remote WebDriver is a class. and that is basically extended in your Chrome driver class and Firefox driver class. So we will see with an example also what is this Chrome driver, Firefox driver class and web driver interface shortly. So this is how the is the hierarchy. We also have this JavaScript executor and a text screenshot interface which is implemented by this particular class. We will also see good examples in the subsequent sessions, but for now this is the typical class hierarchy. Right, so we have seen introduction architecture. Now let us understand some of the concepts which will be required in automation and also for Selenium understanding. So let us understand what is a DOM concept. DOM, document object model, is basically the way to pass on the data from a server to your browser and represent what are the web elements are there and different things. Now a simple example is DOM concept. So it's a programming interface for HTML and XML documents. It represents the page, so that it represents the web page so that programs can change and change the document structure, style, and content. Now, very simple example is if you open if you see the HTML page, any particular HTML page, then that will be represented technically by this particular tags. Okay, tags and elements. So hierarchy wise, we have this topmost tag or topmost element HTML, and we have body and we have head. So let's do one thing. Let's see a demo. So for example, I have this website facebook.com, and this is actually when I hit this particular website, it is loading the content from the server. Now how to see the HTML part is if you just right click here and if you say inspect element or inspect, and if you see here, this is the basic HTML for a particular web page. If you go to any other web page, in the same website, then the same the HTML of that particular can be seen here. Okay, this can be also seen in other browsers. So this currently I'm using Chrome, but you can also see that in other browsers as well. Now what is this HTML? What is this DOM? So as we were discussing, so it has the HTML tag, it has a body and head, and head will have title, and in the body we have the actual web elements. So yeah, this is so in the body section again, it is divided into subsections. So header 1, title, and some web elements and so on. So let's see the actual Facebook example. Now if you see, the title is Facebook hyphen login or sign up. So that is the title, and if you see, this is a particular URL, https www.facebook.com. Now coming to the particular web elements, coming to the HTML part. So how to identify a HTML for a particular element? So right click and inspect. So if you see, now this will actually show the typical HTML for a particular web element. HTML for a particular web element. Let's say I want to know the HTML for this particular element. So I will say right click, or I will say right click here and inspect. So if you see, it will give me the exact HTML used for that particular web element. Now what is web element? That also we will see shortly. If you see a little other part is, we have head, we have this parent HTML tag, we have head, and we have body. So in the head we have this other stuff, the normal housekeeping stuff. Here we'll get the title, and in the body section we will get the elements or the different HTML for different elements. Here I've taken a very simple example, but it can be a bit complicated for a complicated website. For example, e-commerce website. Right, so this is a typical structure. Right, so now web element. So what is the web element part here? Web element is basically the elements on which you interact on a website. For example, a button or a text box and so on. So technically speaking, these are the different web element types which are very, very commonly observed on a typical web page or any web page or any website. So we have button, text boxes, and these all, I think 12, there are couple of others. So these are the web elements with which a user will interact as a end user. and same thing we will have to automate using Selenium library. Right, now these are all the list of web elements, non-exhaustive list of web elements. We will let's see what are the operations on the web element. So we interact with the web element and we do some action. For example, we click, double click, right click, uh, you do mouse hover, we select drop down. You have to, let's say you have to select your birth date, so MMDTYY, drag and drop, file, file, drag and drop, scrolling. So these are the different actions we do on web element. So that is what we will be controlling. We will be trying to simulate using Selenium library, and that is what is automation. Now this DOM part, so let's revisit the DOM part here. So we have seen an example here for a particular element, for example this one. So what is this individual part here? So we are seeing this input type equal to text, class equal to something, name equal to something. So what is this actually? Let us see that. So this is basically called as HTML tag structure. So we have, in general, we have something called as a tag, and we have attribute equal to value in double quotes. Now there can, for a particular element, there is always a tag, and there can be an attribute and there can be a value. There can be multiple attributes with multiple values. There can be multiple attributes with multiple value or single value and multiple combination. We have something called as a visible text here. So on any button or on any web element, if there is a text visible, probably it's a visible text here. Now these are the different examples if you see here. So whatever is there in the list, less than and greater than, that is a tag name. Okay, this div, input, input a, these are the tag names. So here is the here are the very popular tag names which are normally used for very common web pages. Now example is, if you see example, we have ID and toolbar. So what is ID here? ID is basically attribute and toolbar is the value, right? If you say this input ID email class this thing, type this thing, so left hand side is attribute and right hand side is the actual value. Now if you see, this is also same. Yeah, so this one now, click me. So if you see, if you go to a web page and there is a link to click on it, so that it will say click me. So basically that is a link, and this is the visible text, but in backend it can be, it will be navigating to some particular website or a link or a particular web page. So that is a link, and this is a visible text. So obviously you will not see this full text, but you will see a short name basically called as a visible text, and so on. Now this structure varies very differently for different website, for different web elements. Sometimes the web elements may not have attribute, may not have any value, or may have huge attributes and huge value. But the tag is something which is mandatory. So if you see this with Facebook example, so we have this tag, right? So for every element we have this tag, and this attribute and value varies for different elements and different implementation. Okay, so now let us revisit this. So we have seen the DOM concept, we have seen the WebDriver interface, very basic understanding, the class hierarchy, and now let us see the actual demo, how we can launch a Chrome web browser or a particular web browser using programmatically and using Selenium library. So for this, I have the sample project which you can create normally as a sample project. So I have this sample code here. So what are the things which are required? First thing is you need your Chrome browser installed on your system, and obviously if you are using Chrome browser or any kind of a browser, then we will need the browser driver file. So if you see in this example, we have the real browser installed, we need the browser driver file, and we also need the Selenium bindings or the particular Selenium jar files. So Selenium, so Chrome driver, if you go to this particular website, or if you just Google also Chrome driver download, there you can download the particular Chrome driver file for your operating system and for your specific browser version. So similarly for Chrome, as like Chrome, we have browser drivers for other browsers like Firefox and Internet Explorer, Safari, and other things. For simplicity, I'm taking a Chrome browser example here. Why? Because Chrome browser is one of the very popular browser in the community, and it is also very simple to automate. So what we need to do? So this is about the Chrome browser part. Now what about the Selenium library? So if you go to this website, if you go to the Selenium website, the latest website, if you go to the download section, here you can download the Selenium required jar files. So what is jar file? Jar file is a collection of different Java classes, basically an archive. Uh, it is advised to use the latest version. So latest is 3.141.59, and the other developments like Selenium 4 and all, they are still in alpha version, alpha phase, which will be released very soon. So we have downloaded the let's say we downloaded the Chrome driver files. You can put it in any folders. I have put it in the same project folder, and the external jar file which I was talking here, this one. So I have downloaded and put it here. Now we have downloaded that jar file, but we need to also include that jar file in our project for the for setting up the class path. So how to uh, import the external jar files in Intellij is basically you go to file, project structure, and in the library section you say plus and give the path of that particular jar file where you have downloaded, and that will be shown as a additional module here or external module here or external library here, like this, right? So once you do that, then it will be showing something like this. And if you see now, this is a jar file which has collection of different classes and interfaces. Now here if you see org, OpenQA, Selenium, and here you have this WebDriver interface, and also for Chrome or for Firefox we have different packages there. So Chrome driver class, uh, Firefox driver class, and so on. Microsoft Edge, Internet Explorer, and multiple other things, classes are there. Now let us see what is this uh, sample code here. So what we are doing is basically we have a main method wherein we are setting up a variable. So we are basically telling the system, telling the JVM that whenever this program runs, the required Chrome driver will be found on this path. And what we are doing here is basically setting a system property. So now what is a system property? Why we need to set system property? So when this program actually runs, so JVM has to know that where is the Chrome driver located. So that is possible using this system property, using this system property webdriver.chrome.driver. Now for different browsers, this is a let's say webdriver.firefox.driver. So it will be different for this property, will be different for different browsers. And of course we have to set the corresponding exe file path if it is on Windows. So if it is a Chrome driver or Firefox or something called as a Gecko driver or Microsoft Edge driver, so that should be linked here, right? Now this is a again um, example, or again a statement to basically open up a Chrome driver, basically launch a Chrome browser. Now what is this Chrome driver? Chrome driver, as we have discussed, Chrome driver is basically a class in the Selenium set of libraries, that it's a class. And WebDriver, if you see WebDriver, it is written I, so WebDriver is an interface. Okay, so if you see the left hand side is this we are creating a variable of an interface, and the right hand side is basically we are creating an instance of an class. So basically it's a core Java concept only, nothing too fancy. So what we are doing is we are creating an instance and assigning it to a variable. Very simple. Now let's run it to see what happens. Right, so now a browser is launched, and there are some other things which has happened in backend, but that also we'll see in a bit. So one Chrome browser is launched on your system. So how this has happened? Again, going back to the basic. So you using your Java programming, you have interacted with the Chrome browser driver, which is Chrome driver in this example, and it has actually interacted with the real browser. So it has created an instance. It has launched the browser. Okay, so it has launched a browser, and now you can simulate the user actions, whatever you want. Right. So now browser launching is done. Right, so this program is finished. So this is how you launch a browser. Now what is this web driver? What is this what are the methods, or what are the capabilities in the Chrome driver? So let's see that. So now if you see this, going back to the basics, a web driver extends the search context interface. So if you see here, web driver extends the search context interface, right? And now Chrome driver is basically extends the remote web driver. So if you see, web driver extends the search context, and this Chrome driver class is basically extends the remote web driver and also implements some other classes. But this is what is the hierarchy example. Okay, so now let us proceed. Now this web driver, this using the web driver interface or using the methods of web driver interface, let us see what are things which are possible. So we'll see very basic thing. Now we have seen when you say new Chrome driver, it will actually basically launch an instance of the uh, Chrome browser. Now how to interact with that? So this web driver variable or this particular object here have other methods. So what are those methods? So let's say if you want to navigate to a particular URL or a website, you say driver.get, and you have to pass the URL of that particular web page. So driver.get. Now there's another way to go to a particular website using web driver. This is called as driver.navigate to. Now what is the real difference? This also is going to the particular web page. This also is going to a particular web page. So the real difference is, if you say driver.get, what it will just go to the website, and you can also interact with the web elements further. Now if you say driver.navigate.to, what is going to happen is it has these additional methods like to, back, and forward. So what is going to happen is when you say navigate.to, this is equivalent to this get method, nothing much difference. But using navigate.back, if you see, you can go back to the previous URL, and if you say forward, it will go to the next URL. So this is the advantage, I would say, if you want to use driver.navigate to. Both things are good. uh, it is up to your preference which way you want to use it. Okay, so now what is going to happen? It is going to this website first, then it is going to wait for 5 seconds, then going to another URL, then going back, so it will go back to this one, and forward, so it will again come back here, okay, with a delay. Okay, now some of the other methods, let's see quickly. So normally the web driver or the browser will be launched with a particular height and width. Okay, it may not be maximized in size. So you can programmatically maximize it, or you can also set it to a particular position, right? So when you launch a Chrome browser, the X and Y location, the starting point, that can also be changed because of some business requirement. So let's see this. Okay, so now this is the default browser which is launched with this particular height and width and this screen starting point here. Now what is going to happen is driver.get, so it will go to this URL first. Now URL will take some time. The web page will take some time to load on your system, depending on your system configuration, depending on your network speed, and depending on the website is actually how slow and how fast it is, and so on. Right, so it has loaded a sample website. Now it is going to wait for some time, then it will go to another website or another web page. Now driver.navigate.back, so it will go back to the previous URL or previous web page, right, back, and then forward. right? And then it will now maximize the browser and it will resize it, or it will maximize and it will resize, right? So it is resized and maybe the starting point of your X and Y location, and basically close the browser, right? So this is what is this get, navigate methods, manage dot window, maximize, and set position, and driver dot quit. So quit and close again, another set of methods we will see. Right, so some other additional methods here. So delete cookies. So basically cookies are loaded on a particular when you go to a particular website. uh, it is for the business requirements that next time if the user wants to visit the same website, they don't want to log in, or user preferences that will be stored in cookies. So if you want to delete the cookies explicitly for a particular business requirement, for a particular scenario, it is possible using this driver.manage.delete cookies. uh, we'll see the simple implicit weight. So implicit weight it's a weight mechanism for a particular web page, elements to be loaded, and we have to wait for particular web, elements. It works typically when we find the elements and all, but this is a way to wait, to use implicit weight. What is this weight mechanism? That we will see in detail in the subsequent sessions. So let's just run it. Or this is also very simple, so it will delete all the cookies. Visually there is no difference on the browser side that deleting the cookies, it all happens in backend, but then we have a mechanism to delete the cookies. It is also needed for some business purpose or some specific scenarios. So it's very simple and easy. Let's see this. Right, so now this driver.close and driver.quit. Now programmatically, when you are uh, done with your particular test case, then you would also want to close the browser, right? Now why, what is this close and what is this quit method? Now this difference is basically when you launch a browser and when you click on a particular link, what might happen is it will open another tab, right? So Chrome can have multiple tabs or multiple windows. Now this driver.close, what will happen is it will actually close the current tab or the current window, and driver.quit is basically it will close all the windows which were opened during the automation run. Now we will see this example when we actually deep dive into core Selenium concepts. But for now, this is the difference. So if you have just opened one tab or one window, then driver.close or driver.quit doesn't make any difference because it is just a single window or single tab. Okay, so programmatically you can close the browser like this. Right, so these are some other utility methods. So if you want to know what is the current URL of your particular website and what is the current title, this can be used for specific purposes. For example, when you go to a website, let's say register HTML, and when you register and when you click on submit and all, then the URL will change. Okay, so it will, let's say it will be it will say registration successful.html, or again it will say it will go to login.html. So for verification purpose, we would want to know the current URL. uh, what is the current URL, whether the URL, so it will be returned as a string, and whether the string contains a specific word or specific item to be validated. Of course, we will also do the same thing for title of the web page for another business requirement or a test case. Okay, so let's just run it. So it will go to this website or a web page, and it will get the current URL and current title, and it will just print it. So after getting it in a string, we can further validate it, or we can put some assertions and validation items. So I have just chosen a random website which is very simple to load and easy to understand. So if you see here, it has printed this one. URL is this, so it has printed URL is whatever and title is whatever. Okay, so this is the title. title is register, and it has programmatically closed the browser or quit the browser. Now we are yet to discuss what is a web element, but how to find a web element and how to interact with the web element and windows and other things, that we'll be seeing in the upcoming sessions. But this is the simple method. This is the method using which you can find a web element, and also further you can interact with the web element. So now let us see the third part, that is Chrome option and Chrome browser profile. So what is Chrome option? So while we run our automation, we would want that the Chrome to be launched with a specific option. For example, enable disable pop-up or launch in incognito and that sort of options. So that so for that we have a specific class called as Chrome options, and similarly we have this options and profile item on different browsers. So we have Firefox options. I think for Internet Explorer also there is something equivalent, and we can have different browser profile. So let us see for Chrome, that is Chrome options class. So Chrome option is a class in one of the packages, and the rest of the things remains the same. But now you see we have different options here. So add argument incognito, this should be disable pop-up blocking, no sandbox and all. Here you can see when I set this argument window size, some x and y location, I mean basically height and width. Now what will happen is whenever you pass on these options and when you launch a Chrome browser, your browser size will be automatically fixed to this size. Let me choose some odd size so that you will notice the difference. Yeah, disable info bars extension and no sandbox. So this is basically for bypass OS security level. Now we can have also this option called as use automation extension, that is an experimental operation. In the recent version of Chrome browser, this has been bit mandatory, so we have to use it. So this part we will see in a bit. Okay, and now this Chrome options object I'm passing as a Chrome driver uh, in the constructor. So if you see previously we were just using up to this much, but now we will be passing the Chrome options as well. Right, so now what will happen, it will go to this website, but it will have the specific options with which it will launch the browser. So let us see. So if you see, the size will be 1000 by 500. So the width will be a bit slow. Yes, now the height will be a bit less. So this is not a standard size, but this is just for demo. Right, now let us see this one. So Chrome silent output. Now what has happened is in the recent version of Chrome driver, what used to happen is there was one log print which was showing infinitely, and this was causing little annoying thing that why those logs are coming all the time. So if you want to suppress these logs, basically if you want to see only one or two lines and continue the other part of the automation, so if you want to have that, you say silent output equal to true. That means the output will be suppressed. There will be very limited logs will be seen in the on the console. Now let us see this option. This option is for loading the images, disabling the image loading. Now why to disable the loading of the images? Now this is an interesting part, interesting concept, wherein what happens is, let's say you have hundreds of test cases in your automation suite, and you understand the application is a bit stable, and at least let's say the basic tests which has to be tested are always passing. So you don't care that the test case is passed with image is loaded or without image is loaded, because the application is considerably stable. So or similar scenarios, what you do is you do not load the images. So in this case what will happen is loading the image time, loading image into memory, networking resources, so there will be a lot of saving in the time. So one test case or multiple test case, if you see saving time for multiple test cases will actually speed up your test execution. This strategy is also used multiple projects, at least I have seen in multiple organizations. So it is a good practice. So what we do, we do not load the images for some of the test cases, so that will save our time, that will speed up the test execution. So now what will happen is in this test case, what I'm doing is I'm going to this particular URL, but on that URL, on that web page, there are only 2 or 3 images which are loading. Now I am just using let's say I'll use some different size just for understanding. And so what I'll do, I'll launch this, I will run this code. So it will load the web page, but it will not load the image. Now consider you are testing on some e-commerce website or a website which is, a lot of images are there. So your time will be saved automatically. Right. So if you see, I'll just increase the size manually. Right. So if you see image not displaying, there's an image here, there's a Google ad here, and also left hand side there might be some ads. So those will not be loaded. Now those, if they are not loaded, then it will basically save your time. So the automation will work a little bit faster. Okay, now next thing is the Chrome profile or browser profile. So this is also similar that there are different people who are using the same system, so they will be using different browsers, browser profile, and with the different browser profile they might have their own extension, their bookmarks, and their personal settings. So how to make a browser profile? So let me just show you. So if you go to Chrome, then if you see this icon, then you just click on that and you say add, and you can add multiple profiles. So you just have to add and then choose some icon and some profile name and sign in and have your own settings. So I have already created this two profiles. So by default, when you open it, when you launch this Chrome, it will not be loading, or it will be loading a default profile. Now once you add a profile, what will happen is that a separate folder will be created in your installation places, and once you add the profile under this user data, there will be additional users which will be created. So now what I'm doing is I'm using the profile one. Now if you remember, if you notice, for default profile this image will be like this, and whenever I will be using this second profile, or profile one or profile two, then that image or that icon will change. Okay, and anyway I'll go to this website and it will do some other stuff. So let's run this. Right, so if you see this profile icon is different, this background is different, and if you see this additional icons have come up which is not there in the default profile. So that's how you go with the different profile option. Okay, so now the remaining part we will see in the subsequent sessions. Thank you.